afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for today's grant solicitation, the OJJDP Fiscal Year 2020 Comprehensive Anti-Gang Programs for Youth. My name is William Moore, and I am with OJJDP's National Training and Technical Assistance Center, also known as INTAC. And as your technical host, I would like to take a couple of minutes to discuss a few features of the Adobe Connect webinar platform and to provide a few announcements to keep in mind. Please note that this webinar is being recorded. Our webinar will be linked to our YouTube page at a later date. For those looking to find our YouTube page, we do have it located on our active URLs here, where you can click on the YouTube page here and access the webinar. And then for any supporting materials, you can contact the OJJDP TTA Help Desk. For those wishing to download a copy of important documents and resources related to today's webinar, you may do so by locating the Handouts pod directly above the chat area. Here you also find an FAQ for webinar participants that will likely address any technical related questions. Just simply click on the name of the file and then click the download button. Also, as a good practice, and for those who just joined, to mention again to you all, please note that you can log out of Adobe and log back in if you're experiencing any connection issues. Also note to please close any other applications that interfere with your bandwidth that can help with your viewing experience as well. And then also please be sure to log off of any VPN services as well. Other than that, download the FAQ and the troubleshooting document there, and it will help with your experience today. Now, please note that at the end of today's webinar, there will be a Q&A session where Steffi will address any of the questions that are posed during today's webinar. Please type your questions into the chat box as they arise. Now, for those of you participating in today's webinar as a group, and I doubt that anyone is participating in a group just due to the current circumstance, but just in case, if you are, say, with another person, one additional person, please help us count. Feel free to type in the total number of additional people with you. I know at this time most of you all are probably going to be by yourself, but if you are viewing with maybe one or two other individuals, please type in the total number of additional people that are in the room with you today. All right, with that being said, I will now turn our presentation over to Steffi for today's webinar. Steffi, take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. As William said, my name is Steffi Rapp, and I'm a program manager at the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. Prior to going to OJJDP in 2004, I ran a gang and violence prevention and intervention program in Baltimore City. So this topic is near and dear to my heart. Today we're going to, and I also want to say that I hope everybody is staying safe and that everybody is healthy during this pandemic. Okay, so our learning objectives for today are as follows. I will provide a general overview of OJJDP's comprehensive anti-gang programs for youth solicitation. I'm going to highlight key eligibility and solicitation requirements, identify tools and resources for you all that will facilitate the application process, and provide an opportunity for applicants to ask questions at the end. This program, the solicitation, supports the Department of Justice's priorities to reduce violent crime, combat gangs, and enhance public safety. This particular solicitation is providing funding for two categories. Category one is intervention, and that's described as the communities developing youth gang intervention programs to discourage you from joining gangs and help them discontinue their involvement with gangs. Gang intervention targets active gang members, their close associates, and gang members returning from confinement. It requires aggressive outreach, ongoing recruitment, and careful planning and coordination. Gang intervention also includes a multidisciplinary intervention team who can provide an assessment, intervention planning, and case management. Category 2 is suppression. People can apply for suppression grants as well. Suppression is described as focused deterrence and suppression strategies aimed at preventing and reducing youth gang violence. Targeted suppression includes targeting the top gang leaders for aggressive suppression. It involves law enforcement, probation, and prosecution, and it looks to remove dangerous and influential gang members from the community by effective use of sharing gang intelligence, targeting, and vertical prosecution. Okay, wait a second. I just want to make sure that, Okay, who may apply? These are the eligible applicants: states, territories, units of local government, including law enforcement agencies, federally recognized Indian tribal governments, nonprofit organizations, including tribal nonprofit organizations, institutions of higher education, including tribal institutions of higher education. We require that applicants serve youth under the age of 18 years of age. If you are starting with a child that is 16 or 17 and they are in your program for 2 to 3 years, and so they turn 18 when they're in your program, you can keep them in your program. They don't have to be removed because they turn 18. This solicitation provides funds for communities to develop youth gang intervention or suppression programs that aim to reduce violence. The comprehensive gang model. The OJJDP comprehensive gang model is an evidence-based framework for the coordination of multiple strategies to address serious, violent, and entrenched youth street gang problems. The model combines prevention, intervention, and suppression tactics to address the root causes of criminal gang activity within a community. Dr. Irving Spergel and a research team from the University of Chicago looked for successful strategies that address youth gang, their families, and the community institutions that would promote a youth transition from adolescence to productive members of society. With this in mind, law enforcement and other agency personnel in 65 cities reporting problems with gangs were surveyed. Analysis of that information in conjunction with site visits and focus groups led to a mixture of 5 strategies that make up the comprehensive gang model. These 5 strategies are community mobilization, opportunities provision, social intervention, suppression, and organizational change and development. The applicants under Category 1 should propose strategy in their application that build upon the principles of the following comprehensive gang model core strategies: community mobilization, opportunities provision, and social intervention. And these components are interrelated, so they work together to surround the youth with things that the youth will need to be successful. OJJDP encourages applicants for funding under Category 2 to use the comprehensive gang model to develop a variety of suppression strategies. Okay, so community mobilization includes the involvement of local citizens, including former gang members, youth community groups and agencies, and the coordination of programs and staff functions within and across agencies. Opportunities provision includes the development of a variety of specific educational, training, and employment programs that target gang-involved youth. It can also include recreational programs. Opportunities provision is to redirect the youth from the behaviors and activities they're doing and giving them positive pro-social activities to replace maladaptive behaviors with. So when you do an assessment of a youth, you look at what's in there, the programs that are available that you've developed that will help this youth fill their time with recreational activities that are going to be interesting to them, educational opportunities. Maybe they need to take, a GED program or employment programs to help them get training and jobs. Social intervention programs are youth serving agencies, schools, street outreach workers, grassroots groups, faith-based organizations, law enforcement agencies, and other criminal justice organizations reaching out and acting as a link between gang-involved youth and their families, the conventional world, and needed services. When we talk about all of these things together, it's social workers, school resource officers, employment agencies, and local citizens, former gang members, outreach workers, all coming together to surround the youth in a multidisciplinary approach to help that person move along in a direction of being able to have positive activities and get out of a gang. An intervention team is a primary component of the model, of the comprehensive gang model. The goal of the intervention team is to share information that presents opportunities for all members of the team to engage gang-involved youth and work together to determine appropriate services for the youth. Agencies represented on the team should include, as I've just mentioned, police, juvenile probation, street outreach staff, school personnel, social service agency staff, and job employment development representatives or others who may provide intervention services for youth. Okay, for suppression, this category supports focused deterrence and suppression strategies aimed at preventing and reducing youth gang violence. Applicant organizations are encouraged to develop and implement a variety of suppression strategies aligned with the principles of the suppression core strategy in the OJJDP comprehensive gang model. If you go to the National Gang Center's website, which we have for you on here, you'll be able to read extensively about the comprehensive gang model, how to do an assessment of your community to see where your gang problem exists, and it explains the suppression and intervention components very clearly for you to be able to put together what you need for this application. Additionally, for suppression, specific objectives in this solicitation includes developing a customized gang suppression strategy, addressing how to reduce youth gang and gun violence and increase public safety at the same time, increasing the scope and effectiveness of community-based youth violence and gang control strategies, and applying formal and informal social control procedures, including close supervision or monitoring of gang youth by agencies of the criminal justice system and also by community-based agencies, schools, and grassroots groups. OJJDP requests that applicants become a part of the Project Safe Neighborhood suite of programs, which is focused all across the country on reducing violent crime. These initiatives coordinate proactively with PSN teams in districts through U.S. Attorney's offices, and it's to enhance collaboration and strengthen commitment to reduce violent crime. Applicants are encouraged to demonstrate a willingness to engage with the respective district of the U.S. Attorney's Office where violent crime reduction is a priority for the purpose of collaboration. And applicants that demonstrate how the U.S. Attorney's Office has been engaged and the role it will play in the event that funding is awarded will receive priority consideration. So if you already have an existing relationship with your U.S. Attorney's Office and you're part of Project Safe Neighborhoods, please include in your application a demonstration of that relationship. And if you are just applying for funding and don't have an existing relationship yet, please demonstrate how you will be engaged with that U.S. Attorney's Office and Project Safe Neighborhoods and how you've reached out to them. Coordination with the National Gang Center is going to be key. During the project period, so successful program site applicants should be prepared to work with the National Gang Center, as they are OJJDP's designated national training and technical assistance provider. They address local training and technical assistance needs all across the country, and they can help you with range capacity building plans. They can help you create a strategic delivery plan. They can help you with your community assessment if needed. Their website is www.nationalgangcenter.gov. You will also be able to find a plethora of information on the comprehensive gang models. I suggested checking it out earlier for that, and anything that you really want to know about gangs in the United States. Okay, so these are the goals and deliverables for this particular solicitation. We want applicants to reduce and sustain reductions in community youth violence, especially gun and gang violence and victimization. We want to prevent violence and promote healing from victimization and exposure to gang violence. Convene a task force or working group that meets regularly throughout the project period to identify and address service gaps and barriers, and use funding for a wide variety of intervention and suppression strategies targeting youth who are in a gang or at risk of joining a gang. Now, these resources that are listed below give a lot of information on programs that are already out there across the country. You can look at OJJDP's website. OJJDP's Model Programs Guide contains evidence-based and promising juvenile justice, youth prevention, intervention, and reentry programs. And it's a resource specifically for practitioners and communities about what works and what doesn't work in this arena. So I would definitely check that out if you're looking to see what kind of programs are in your area that can be used for gang intervention. And if you're going to be adding new programs, then you can look and see what has already worked in similar communities as yours that have similar types of gang problems. You can also review OJPCrimesolutions.gov. They have a lot of research and inform practitioners and policymakers about what works in criminal justice, juvenile justice, and crime victim services. And also the last two, Youth.gov provides an interactive tools and other resources to help youth-serving organizations and community partnerships plan, implement, and participate in effective programs for youth. And of course, as I've mentioned, the National Gang Center has a wealth of information and knowledge on outcome-driven practices that engage and empower those in communities with chronic and emerging gang problems. They will help you create solutions. They can help you with prevention, intervention, suppression, and I strongly urge you to visit that website. Also, the comprehensive gang model in detail is a part of that website. Priority consideration. So for this solicitation, there will be priority considerations given for certain applications. One is for applications from federally recognized tribes. Two, for applications that address specific challenges that rural communities face. Three, applications that demonstrate that the youth that are going to be served reside in high poverty areas or persistent poverty counties. Applications that offer enhancement to public safety in economically distressed communities, qualified opportunity zones, and applications that go to enhancing criminal justice and public safety by indicating agreement to comply with one or more of the following law enforcement related award conditions related to cooperation, non-interference, and non-disclosure information. So OJJDP will be awarding a maximum of 8 awards under Category 1 for intervention. The estimated maximum dollar amount for each award will be $500,000, and these programs will start October 1st, 2020. for 36 months. Funding for suppression grants, up to 11 awards will be made with an estimated maximum dollar amount for each award of $230,000. Those grants will also start on October 1st, 2020, and will run for 36 months as well. Okay, I'm going to start talking to you all about OJJDP's grant application process, which all OJJDP applicants have to go through this application process. This is the general process. This is what your application should include when you are applying for this grant: a project abstract, a program narrative, 30-page limit. You have to stick to the 30-page limit because there are basic minimum requirements. That's one of them for these grants, and you want to make sure if it tells you exactly what kind of, the amount of pages, the kind of spacing and all of that, you want to follow that to a T. A budget detail worksheet, budget narrative, indirect cost rate, tribal authorizing resolution if you are a tribal applicant, applicant disclosure of high-risk status if you've already had a grant with DOJ before and have been designated high risk. That needs to be disclosed. And you can see here the rest of what needs to be included as a part of your application. Okay, so as mentioned, the program narrative, there's a 30-page limit that you have to stick to, and you want to write about the statement of the problem, which describes your particular gang problem in your area, program design and implementation, the capabilities and competencies of your organization, and how you plan to collect data for the performance measures reporting. Okay, so for statement of the problem, applicants should briefly describe the nature and scope of the gang problem in your community or where you plan on putting these grant dollars. Like what target population are you focusing on and where is the need in your community? Applicants should use data to provide evidence that the gang problem exists and demonstrate the size and scope of the problem, and then document the effects of the problem on the target population and the larger community. Applicants should describe the target population and any previous or current attempts to address the gang problem in your local area. For project design and implementation, applicants should detail how the project will operate throughout the funding period and describe the strategies that you will use to achieve goals and objectives identified. Each applicant should describe how you will complete the deliverables in stated goals, objectives, and deliverables. Again, don't forget, if you're going to be applying under a priority consideration, you need to make sure that you include that and discuss the coordination with the local Project Safe Neighborhoods team. Please include a timeline or chart that indicates the major tasks associated with the goals and objectives of your project and the responsibilities for each. And then when you submit your timeline, you don't want to put specific calendar dates. You just want to put month one, quarter one, year one. You want to label it as such. Capabilities and competencies. In this section, the applicant should describe the experience and capability of the applicant organization and any contractors or sub-grantees that the applicant will be using to implement and manage this effort and its associated federal funding. You want to highlight any previous experience implementing a project that's similar to this, of similar design and magnitude, to show that your organization can handle managing, spending, and implementing a program of this nature. Applicants should highlight your experience and your capability and capacity to manage subawards. How you can put in there how you monitor subawards and include details on your system for fiscal accountability of subawards. You want to explain your management and staffing patterns, and they should be clearly connected to the project design that's going to be described in the previous section. Applicants should describe the roles and responsibilities of key personnel and explain the program's organizational structure and operations. So you should include a copy of your organizational chart for your organization, showing how your organization operates, including who manages the finances, how the organization manages their subawards, how you monitor your subawards, and the management of the project proposed for funding. Okay, so all OJJDP awardees have to report with, on their performance measures. We do have an OJJDP online performance measurement tool, and here's the website. The application should show that you understand performance data reporting requirements for this particular grant program and detail how you plan on gathering the required data if you receive funding. So your budget worksheet is a list of expenses in the in proposed categories, and the budget narrative needs to thoroughly and clearly describe every category and expense listed in your budget detail worksheet. So if you put funding down in, for supplies, even though it might seem obvious, what supplies are, you actually need to, in your budget narrative, explain what you're going to be purchasing for your supplies. Be as detailed as possible in your budget narrative. Also, include in your budget money to support up to 3 staff to be able to travel to a 3-day cross-site grantee meeting in each year of the project. So that's for 3 years. For each year, you need to include funds to be set aside for 3 staff to travel to a 3-day cross-site meeting. As I mentioned, if your organization is a DOJ high-risk grantee, then that needs to be disclosed. Okay, so I mentioned we went over the timeline. These are the additional attachments. A timeline, job descriptions outlining roles and responsibility for all key personnel, your organization's organizational chart, and the priority considerations that you are going to be applying under. So OJP will give priority consideration in an award decision to applications that address specific challenges that rural communities face. Each applicant proposing to receive priority consideration under the rural priority should provide a sufficient narrative. So you're going to want to write like a page or a paragraph to a page to include what makes the geographical service area that you are going to be serving rural, and you need to use the U.S. Census data or other appropriate government data to distinguish exactly the area you're talking about and how that area is isolated from needed services, and how it will address specific challenge, how your organization and program will address specific challenges in rural communities. Likewise, you need to document challenges related to high poverty areas or persistent poverty counties if you are going to be applying with priority consideration for under that area. OJP will give priority consideration in award decisions to applications that demonstrate that individuals who will benefit from the requested grant reside in high poverty areas. So the kids that you are working with need to live in a high poverty area or persistent poverty county, also showing census data or other government data where exactly you are going to be providing services and exactly to who your target audience will be, and then writing a narrative explaining why that area is a high poverty area or a persistent poverty county. So each applicant proposing to receive consideration under the high poverty areas or persistent poverty counties priorities should provide a sufficient narrative. I just explained this, but to identify by census tract or by specific poverty county where individuals are intended to benefit from the requested grant, show exactly where you're going to be targeting youth and working with youth, and how the requested grant will address the challenges in that specific area or county. Again, this is similar. Please show documentation of enhanced public safety and qualified opportunity zones. OJP will give priority consideration in awarding decisions to designated qualified opportunity zones. Each applicant that's proposing to receive a priority consideration under the qualified opportunity zone should provide a sufficient narrative explanation in order for OJP to identify clearly the public safety benefit the applicant anticipates that its project will have on that specific qualified opportunity zone. And please, again, show in the census data where the qualified opportunity zone is. The narrative and the list of affected qualified opportunity zones by census tract number must be included as an attachment that's clearly labeled as addressing qualified opportunity zones. You may also include tables, charts, graphs, or other relevant illustrations that may be useful in comprehending the manner in which the proposed project is anticipated to benefit the qualified opportunity zone. Okay. Also, additional attachments also include documentation of enhanced public safety, certifications regarding enhancing criminal justice and public safety through law enforcement related award conditions if this is applicable to your application. So OJP will give priority consideration in awarding decisions to state or local government entity applicants that operate at least one correctional facility and agree to comply with award conditions related to cooperation with federal law enforcement, which is set forth in Appendix A. If under Appendix A, you'll see a place to sign and submit the certification with your application. In addition, there's a certification regarding non-interference with federal law enforcement. OJP will give priority consideration in award decisions to state or local government entity applicants that agree to comply with award conditions related to non-interference with federal law enforcement, as set forth in Appendix B, which is in your application, and there's also a place to sign and submit that as well with your application. Each such applicant proposing to receive priority consideration for such non-interference with federal law enforcement must sign and submit the certification provided. And finally, certification regarding non-disclosure of federal law enforcement information if this is applicable. OJP will give priority consideration in award decisions to state or local government entity applicants that agree to comply with award conditions related to non-disclosure of federal law enforcement information, and that's Appendix C. Each applicant proposing to receive priority consideration for such non-disclosure of law enforcement sensitive information must sign and submit the certification in Appendix C. Okay, so this is what your application will be basically graded on. It will be evaluated by peer reviewers, and they use the following criteria. They look at your statement of the problem, and that's weighted 20% of your application. Project design and implementation 30%, capabilities and competencies 30%. Your plan for collecting data required for the solicitation performance measures is worth 10%, and your budget is worth 10%. So you want to submit a complete cost-effective budget that shows allowable costs. Budget narratives should be included, and should demonstrate how applicants will maximize cost effectiveness of grant expenditures, and budget narrative should demonstrate cost effectiveness in relation to potential alternatives and the goals of the project. So peer reviewers will review the application submitted under the solicitation, under solicitations that meet basic minimum requirements. Basic minimum requirements are that you've submitted all of the sections and everything required, that you're within the 30 pages for your narrative, that you included an abstract and things, and a budget narrative, that things of that nature. OJJDP may use internal peer reviewers, external peer reviewers, or a combination to review these applications. The application must be submitted through Grants.gov, and the Office of Justice Programs urges applicants to submit applications 72 hours prior to the due date. I suggest that you get your application in as soon as possible, because sometimes Grants.gov has technical issues and you don't want to get caught up in that if you don't have to. You want to register with Grants.gov as soon as possible when you first start your application process, because every organization who applies needs a DUNS number, and if you don't have one, you get one by calling Dun & Bradstreet, and here's the information for that. If you are experiencing technical difficulties during the process, please call the Grants.gov customer support hotline, and here's the phone numbers for that. Okay. Late applications are not accepted unless there's a technical problem with Grants.gov on our end, on OJJDP's end. A problem with Grants.gov on the applicant side, like a lack of DUNS number, will not result in a waiver to submit late. So please make sure you get your DUNS number right away. OJJDP strongly encourages all prospective applicants to sign up for Grants.gov email notifications regarding the solicitation. Okay. And here are some resources: writing tips, the OJP financial guide, so that you know what allowable costs are when you're putting your budget together. And again, the National Gang Center's website information. And that's it. And I'm happy to answer questions. Okay, so some questions were sent in prior to. I'll start with some of those. Okay, so one person wrote, I'm working with a youth born into the gang culture. The father is a high-ranking gang member, and this person doesn't see any way for the young man to get out with a father who's a high-ranking gang member. So my response to that is there are different kinds of gangs out there, intergenerational gangs, as this person's talking about, transnational gangs, crews, and intervention programs or interventions that you may pick to use with a person will be different based on what issues are going on. And you want to check out the National Gang Center's website and get technical assistance from them, because they do work with international gangs and can give you direction. One person asked if reentry partners, will funds pay for reentry partners to pay for emergency housing? As a part of your intervention program, yes. If emergency housing is something your program offers, that would be allowable for a gang member getting out of a gang. Another question is, why do kids get involved in gangs? So again, I'm going to direct everyone to the National Gang Center's website, but just briefly, I can tell you that there are risk factors and protective factors of why kids join gangs, and certain things that keep kids from getting involved in gangs. There are community risk factors, individual risk factors, peer risk factors, family risk factors, and school risk factors. Community risk factors include availability of firearms, drugs, poverty, low neighborhood attachment. Individual risk factors include violent tendencies or conduct disorder. Peer risk factors include peer gang membership, drug use, or delinquency. School risk factors, low achievement, low school attachment. And family risk factors include poor supervision or possible family violence or sibling delinquency. And protective factors include strong family with good supervision, strong school attachment, friends with kids that aren't in gangs that are pulling them towards recreational activities that are healthy and adaptive for adolescents. And other factors that pull youth towards gangs include kids that are searching for a sense of belonging and identity, possibly money, status, respect. So it depends. There are all different reasons why kids join gangs based on the risk factors involved and their protective factors that they may or may not have and what's pulling at them in their adolescent development. If you look at the National Gang Center's website, it gives you a lot of information and detail about why youth join gangs. Okay. Okay, so another question that came in was what type of programs would I recommend to help with gang problems? And as I've mentioned earlier, there are a lot of different types of gang problems, and that it's really necessary for each community to do their own assessment of their area and their community as to what type of gang problem they have and what's going on in that community and who the target population is that's going to be served. And then you can look at resources on the resources page, the websites that I mentioned, and the National Gang Center's database of programs that's broken up by risk factor and also age, along with crimesolution.gov and the OJJDP Model Programs Guide. There are a lot of different programs that you can look at that would help with intervention programs. Your community probably has existing programs as well that you may want to look at and create a universe of the existing resources you already have in your community that could be used for intervention purposes. Let's see. Somebody asked about organized crime and where that fits in. And OJJDP does not include organized criminal activity, organized crime, in the definition of a youth gang. So that's a whole other entity, and this solicitation is not focused on organized crime. It's focused on youth gang intervention and suppression. Somebody asked, where can you find information on the comprehensive gang model? And that's at the National Gang Center's website. The website was listed in this PowerPoint, and you can get a lot of information on the comprehensive gang model. I gave you the background, how it was developed by Irving Spergel, the different components, interrelated strategies, and the Gang Center's website will give you a whole understanding of all the different pieces and how they interrelate and how they fit together. Let me see if I can see other questions. Okay. Okay, it says, what is the deadline for online submission? The deadline is 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on May 26, 2020. But as I said, I would get your application in sooner rather than later so that you don't have to worry about anything happening with Grants.gov. Mrs. Shelton writes, does the applicant have to be a specific type of nonprofit organization? You don't have to be, you have to be a nonprofit organization, and you have to be able to show in the capabilities and competency section that you can handle doing this type of grant program. So the answer is yes, you can be any type of nonprofit organization that works with youth that can, put together a program of this magnitude. Okay. Okay, so William wrote, does the assessment need to be done before applying? You have to be able to show in your application who your target population is in your area. Specifically, you have to give an understanding of what your gang problem is in your area and be able to write about it and write about what people have already tried to do to mitigate that gang problem. So I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't know if a formal assessment needs to be completed, but you have to do definitely some level of an assessment to know and understand your community's gang problem, and be able to write about it and say what you're going to do to fix it. Okay, Okay, so someone wrote, how will COVID-19 affect this grant if life is not normalized? That I can't really answer. My hope is that life will be normalized. Our plan is to move forward because the grant starts in October. I mean, I hope everything's back to normal by then, or I'm not sure. I mean, maybe things will have to be modified, but I really can't answer that question. Someone wrote again, what is the deadline for submission? That's 11:59 p.m., May 26, 2020. So I listed, someone wrote, what type of credentials do you need to qualify for a grant? You need to meet the eligibility requirements, which if you look in the solicitation, and I read them out here, the eligible applicants include state and territory units of local government, federally recognized Indian tribal governments, nonprofit organizations, including tribal nonprofit organizations, and institutions of higher education, including tribal institutions of higher education. So those are all the different entities that are able to apply. Units of local government includes police forces, police departments. Okay, should an intervention prevention grant use all of the strategies under that category, or can we focus? This particular grant focuses on Category 1 intervention and Category 2 suppression. So prevention is a part of the comprehensive gang model, and with the team of programs and stakeholders that you bring together, there may be prevention as a part of the overall comprehensive gang model that you're doing, but the funds for this solicitation should go towards the intervention component and or the suppression component, depending on which you are applying for. That's a part of the overall gang model. Is a pilot program an option? A pilot program, well, the solicitation requires that you use the comprehensive gang model and the definitions of suppression and intervention in the comprehensive gang model. So if your pilot program fits into the comprehensive gang model, either intervention or suppression definitions, then you can pilot some new programming within that model. Okay. I'm looking to see if there are any other. Oh, somebody asked, would this level of technical assistance be available now or after being awarded funding? The National Gang Center could not help you with your application, but if you already have a gang program that you're running, you can ask for technical assistance with your current gang program from the National Gang Center. If you go on their website, it'll explain how you can ask for technical assistance, but they can't help you with your application. Okay. Okay, I think that's about it. There's a couple of questions about the certifications, and my phone number is 202-598-0807, and I can try to get some of those questions answered for you about the specific certification requirements. Let me see if there's any other questions. I saw one more question here in the chat box. So someone asked, how does this application fall in line with working with kids over 18? The funding from OJJDP has to go to work with youth under the age of 18. That's our mandate by Congress. So if you have a bigger program, but you direct this application and the programming from this solicitation for youth, then you may be using similar resources and intervention program strategies for kids over 18, for adolescents over 18, but our funding has to go specifically, whether it's suppression focused or intervention focused, working with youth under the age of 18. So as I mentioned, my phone number is 202-598-0807 if there are additional questions. Somebody asked, will priority be given to expanding, building upon programs that are already underway? Only the priorities that I read that are listed in the solicitation will be granted funding, and that's for what I had already talked about, building a case for a rural area, poverty area, qualified opportunity zone, and the certifications. And also remembering to be a part of Project Safe Neighborhoods in your area. Okay, can you apply for both grants? Yes. You just have to have 2 applications. Someone asked how much the grant is for. That's right in the solicitation. One is for up to $500,000 for intervention, and one is for up to $230,000 for suppression. Yeah, under 18. Somebody asked what is the specific age group. It's for kids under 18. Okay. Well, it looks like I've answered the majority of your questions. If you have additional questions, I've given you all my phone number, or my email is, and also there's a response center, 800-851-3420. You can start there. And if you have additional questions, we'll get the answers to you. And yeah, it was very nice talking with you all today. I hope everyone stays safe and healthy. And
great.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Steffi. Thanks, Steffi. Thank you all for joining. Before we adjourn, and thank you all. If we didn't get to your question again, remember that you can submit your question to the response center here regarding the application, and we can get those answered there. So really quickly, just wanted to remind folks before we wrap up that we have a few brief reminders. First of all, make sure that you stay in touch with OJJDP's INTAC by following us on Facebook. You can also join our listserv as well. You can simply click on the link that's here, or you can feel free to text at INTAC, NTTAC, to 22828 if you like as well, to sign up for our listserv. The other thing that we would like to remind you all is if you would like to get in contact with OJJDP, please feel free to contact the OJJDP TTA Help Desk. The contact information is included on this slide. Do you have a training or technical assistance need? Well, if so, please feel free to submit your request or your TTA assistance need to our TTA 360 platform. OJJDP's TTA 360 platform can be located at the URL link displayed on this slide. Remember that our webinar will be posted in a few days on our YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is located here, and please feel free to click on there to access other archived webinars that we have. And if you like any type of supporting materials, then please contact the OJJDP TTA Help Desk. Please be sure to join us for these upcoming events. We have a grant solicitation webinar focused on reducing risk for girls in the JJ system. This solicitation webinar is for anybody who's interested in applying for this particular grant solicitation from OJJDP. This will be on April 23rd. We have another solicitation webinar coming up on April 28th, Preventing Trafficking of Girls solicitation webinar that will be coming up on the 28th. These links are indeed live. You could feel free to click on the Learn More there to learn more about each of these solicitation webinars. You can also select the Register Now that will allow for you to register for the solicitation as well. We also have a few non-solicitation webinars coming up soon. On the 27th, we will have a Understanding and Combating Cyberbullying and Digital/Online Hate webinar that will be hosted actually by today's moderator, Ms. Steffi Rapp. So that webinar is coming up on the 27th. If you could, you can register for that now. If you're interested in joining, you can also click Learn More, and that will allow for you to check out that the details behind that specific webinar coming up on cyberbullying. We also have another webinar coming up by the folks at Children and Family Futures coming up on May the 19th. Feel free to click on that Learn More, even register for that webinar here. And that being said, lastly, with the remaining folks that are on for the next 30 seconds or so, I would like you all to complete our final poll question that we have here. How do you plan to apply the information from this webinar in your work? Feel free to click on the respective box here. You can click on multiple boxes if you would like to. You could feel free to just go on in here and just click on any of the selections here that will pretty much assure that you can go in and let us know how you plan to apply this information. Again, thank you all for joining us for today. Have a wonderful afternoon. Goodbye.